Hey, everybody. Welcome to our next panel from the 2021 Senior Capstone class. This panel is on branding design, and we have Savannah, Emily, Jordan Stewart, and Jordan Weissert who are going to present their work. As they're presenting, please feel free to add comments and questions and feedback into the chat. The way that the format works for this is we're going to do all four presentations back to back, and then we will transition into a QA time after that. So add your questions, add your comments, add your feedback, and I will filter them into the question and answer period that we have at the end. So with that, Savannah, if you want to start sharing your screen, Jordan, Emily, and I, we will turn our cameras off. And when you're ready, the screen is yours.
All right, thank you very much. All right, it should be up.
Yep, I see your title screen, full screen.
Perfect. All right. So hi, everyone. I'm Savannah Lindell, and for my capstone, I'm settling on a branding project. The project is called Bear Tough Outfitters. So to help set the tone for this little presentation, I'm going to read a quote I found that I thought was very important to share. There is nothing so American as our national parks. The fundamental idea behind the parks is that the country belongs to the people, that it is in the process of making for enrichment in the lives of us all. That is by FDR. So why backpacking? I was between two ideas at the very beginning of this, and after discussion with Alex Braywood, I chose a concept I knew less information over. I had learned a little bit about this, and I figured it was a good way to expand my current knowledge and elaborate on it. It was while I could learn and work, and I could also enrich other people and teach them more about it myself. So my idea for this project was to work on branding. I wanted to make something more personable than a big company that takes over. I wanted to sell on something small. So a boutique was a really good size where I could do a lot of deliverables and show off something I really wanted to work on. I hadn't had the chance to, which is infographics. So my goal and my challenge were the same thing. Cohesion is an important part of design, and it can also present itself as a challenge. My solution, though, for this was to create a single color palette and style so I could reference it as I worked during this project. So first up, I'm going to show you guys my logo style guide. The colors I used were all very natural and could be seen in any part of nature. Nothing completely jumps out, so it's nice that it doesn't totally distract from where you are. The bear and the paw came from the idea I had in a small group discussion. The typography I use is balanced through the toughness of Bear Tough and how straight edged it is to the soft lines in the Outfitters. So starting into all my deliverables, I'm going to start with my favorite one. This is my hiking and parks fact infographic. So for this, I focused on important facts or things I found interesting while I was doing research in the beginning stages of this project. My goal was to create an infographic that balanced both pictures and text, as sometimes it leans one way or the other. And I really wanted to make something that was much more middle ground and was very visually appealing to look at. I also wanted this place to be marketed on the infographic. So in the bottom section where you see the bear paws, it actually goes into a little bit more about Bear Tough's promise to its outfitters, to its employees and everything. My next infographic is an important one about how to properly pack your backpack. Backpacking is a very rigorous thing to do. It's a lot of days without really any solid shelter, and you take everything you have and put it on your back when you go. So it's really important that you properly set everything together. Things are reachable where they should be. Heavy things are located at just the right place. So here I have a detailed description on the very top, along with a link if you were to look to sign up for more classes. That's another marketing example. But then I have a nice little breakdown of what would go in each of the sections and a few things that would go there along with cute little designs as well. As this is a boutique and is located in just one single area, a shipping box or just a box to send stuff in or send customers home with is really important. So here I found some mock-ups of boxes and I designed them all. I wanted to make sure they're really detailed and fun to look at without being totally like random, wild, and too much color. So I created this cute little vector illustration to go on the bottom, along with a lot of like locations for branding. On the inside, you can see the company's policy that is like thank you to the customer. Okay, so here is my website mockup. It's nothing too crazy, but it's important that it focuses on like natural colors and being like more subtle than anything else. And then next we have my Trailhead kiosk mockup. So Trailhead kiosks are very important. They can be the size of a single page of paper or as big as like half a billboard almost. Usually what is seen on these trailheads offer you information about what you're about to see, what you need to know, and important numbers to call just in case something happens, along with a map usually, just so you know. So while these are usually really information dense, I wanted to help break mine up through the use of hierarchy. So as you see, I have different headings, I have italics used, and I use different colors to help break it up a little bit so it's easier to see and spot. So if you're just walking past it, it's not one block of text as most of them are. You can actually see like, oh, permits acquired, and like make that a note to yourself as you keep going. Here is my BLE set. It's very clear and easy to understand. I kept the fun little illustration down at the bottom to add some excitement and flair to it, while still maintaining the use of the Futura font as the secondary component for everything. So these are actually my cool down mockups. At the end of projects, whether it be illustration or graphic design, I think it's important to have something to slow down and still design with. So what I created here was two different style shirts and the Instagram page. The shirts have their own tags, as you can see on the side, that talk more about what they're made with and just about what they are. The infographic for the Instagram is the front page that features some posts that they have, a few highlights, and if you look closer, you can see a possible Q&A session you could have attended, the possible update of their collection for spring 2021 launch, and everything like that. And that is actually the end of my project. So thank you very much for listening.
Excellent. Thanks, Savannah. Great work. Okay, so now moving on. Emily, if you want to turn your camera on and share your screen. And as we're transitioning to Emily and she's getting her screen shared, welcome everybody who's joined the live stream. While we're doing the presentations, please feel free to add comments, questions, and feedback into the chat. We're going to do all the presentations, followed by a Q&A discussion session after the last presentation. So as Emily's presenting, please feel free to add comments and questions in the chat. So Emily, whenever you're ready, feel free to take it away.
Okay, perfect. Let me know if there are any issues.
Should there be sound?
I wanted yes. Can you hear it?
I think we started to, sorry, I think we started here right as I interrupted.
As an individual that often plays with toys and enjoys buying toys, I regularly get stares and strange looks at checkouts of stores. I wanted my capstone to be something small that would benefit everyday life on a larger scale. After researching the benefits of play, I learned that this form of entertainment is beneficial for more than just children. It does not exist in the United States due to cultural ideals that worship the idea that citizens must always be busy and working. There's a sense of engagement that you get from playing because it takes you away from reality. Some psychologists say that play is essential for your well-being. It releases endorphins, it improves brain function, stimulates creativity, improves problem solving, and it helps us stay young and energetic. Individuals who play with others will also benefit socially and build relationships while breaking down feelings of embarrassment. My brand is called Drift, and it is a brand centered around influencing adults to play as they did in their childhood. The name Drift comes from letting the mind drift away from reality into a state of play. There are 4 different box options that fit the diverse interests and needs of the audience, including a sculpting box, a coloring box, a block box, and a marble box. The goal of the brand is to provide a healthy, non-judgmental space to normalize play. In other words, play is whatever the audience makes of it. Drift is just there to provide the tools to make it happen. It takes an adult back to a childlike state while making the product packaging more adult-friendly than buying toys presented in silly and somewhat embarrassing packaging like traditional toys. When starting off with my brand, I really looked into colors first. I wanted to take the audience back to the basics, and I thought what better way to do that than through the primary colors. I also felt that these colors presented a welcoming feeling, and they're colors that everybody is familiar with and likes. For my main font, I chose Omnis. I felt as though Omnis did a great job giving a relaxed, playful feel to professional brands. I feel it will withstand time and communicate the feel and open attitude of play. While creating a logo, I really went into looking at more bubbly, floaty feels due to the feeling of bringing your mind out of your everyday life and away from your stress. Here you can see some of those options that I tried playing with, but ultimately ended up going with the logo that I did because of the sense of movement it creates, as well as the bubbly, fun, lighthearted feeling it gives off. Aside from thinking of what I was going to do for my capstone at all, the most challenging part of this was starting off with packaging. I knew that I wanted to keep it simple, so I wanted to use basic generic shapes, and at first I really wasn't sure how I was going to use those shapes in the best possible way on the packaging. I started just by sketching some things that I had already seen, some things that I thought were cool, and then I had the idea to correlate the shapes on the box to what was inside of each of them. Each package includes a bifold giving simple directions as to how and why you should play. Some people have a very hard time recognizing the need to play and separating that from the embarrassment of engaging with something that is traditionally meant for children. The first box you're seeing here is called the marble box. It includes little tubes and circles on the front to correlate with the marbles and the building tubes that you will find inside. The tubes inside of this box are meant for the audience to be able to build the marble on it and see it go down its course, so that the audience will have a goal in mind and an outcome that they can share with others, as well as find satisfaction within themselves for finishing it. And the tubes come in a cylinder paper container, while the marbles come in a more traditional cloth pouch, so that the audience can have the option to throw away the box yet keep some of the packaging for the objects inside. The next box is the block box, which contains square and rectangular building blocks, as well as triangular building blocks and building blocks more shaped like an arch. These also come in paper tubes, much like the marble box does. Much like all of the rest of the packaging, these tubes feature what's inside of them. The next box is the sculpting box with big blobs on the front to show that the dough has no particular shape and can be sculpted into whatever the audience would like. Instead of traditional, smaller plastic packaging that you would normally find a dough like this put in, it comes in small tin containers to give the brand a more sophisticated feel, while also representing what's inside, and to really emphasize that this brand is targeted towards adults. The last box is the coloring box. This has no particular shape on the front, just scribbles, as you can imagine why. I really wanted this box to keep the loose, fun feel that the other boxes had, but I did not want to restrict it to traditional shapes. And like children, I wanted my audience to be unbothered by coloring inside of the lines and keeping their projects neat. This box, as you can imagine, comes with a coloring book The idea behind this coloring book is that it's not complex. It's not as complex as an adult coloring book, but it's not as simple as a children's coloring book. So for those who feel that an adult coloring book is too much or too overwhelming and unachievable, while a children's one is too easy, this provides the perfect in-between for the audience. It also comes with a box of colored pencils with a liftable lid that closes back up on top the same way. And it comes with a guided sketchbook as well for those who don't want to be limited by a coloring book and want to express their creativity but sometimes feel stuck. And last but not least, we have the everything box, which includes one of everything to present bulk buying options, possibly for an office setting or for the individual who wants one of each box but doesn't want to have to pay for each box at full price. So this box will also be at a discounted rate. The audience will learn about Drift through either their social media, which will show up as sponsored ads on different social media platforms, or the audience can go and follow it for updates and deals and such, or the audience can go to the website to purchase the products or browse or simply just learn more. The website maintains the minimalistic feel of the rest of the brand while also providing information to the audience about the brand, as well as options to buy. The audience can also click on each picture and learn more about them. There is also a products page. There is just the products aside from the home page. Some people might not want to scroll on the home page and simply go straight to the products. Overall, this site is minimalistic. It uses basic imagery to stay as consistent and clean as possible. If you want to keep up with what I am making post-graduation, whether that's just things for fun or things for work, you can follow my design Instagram. Or if you'd like to see more of my projects that I've already done, you could go to my online portfolio. And thank you so much for your time.
Yep, and that's pretty much it. That's my brand and my full presentation.
All right, great. Thanks, Emily. Very well done. Okay, so next up we have Jordan Stewart. So Jordan, if you want to start the process of sharing your screen. For anybody who's watching live, please feel free to add comments and questions and feedback into the chat. We have 2 more presentations, and then at the conclusion of those, we will transition into a QA session. So feel free to add comments into the chat and we'll introduce them into the discussion afterwards. So Jordan, yep, I see your title screen full screen, so take it away. Oh, you're muted still. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. I need to.
That's it.
1 second.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay. So you can see my first slide now?
Nope.
Oh,
Nope, it's not sharing anymore.
okay. 1 second. There we go. You can see it now, right?
Yep, there we go.
Okay, sorry about that.
Nope, you're totally
Okay.
fine.
So, hi everyone. For my project, I chose to do a rebrand for Miami Honey. So what is Miami Honey? Miami Honey is a small business located here in La Villa, Iowa, with its sole proprietor being Janet Hers. With what started out as a hobby, as well as a general interest in honeybees and how they contribute to the sustainability of our environment, turned into Janet's love for beekeeping and packaging the honey for others to enjoy. Some of the values of Miami Honey include promoting sustainability of honeybee population and education opportunities, volunteering at the Iowa State Fair and local fair booths, attending local honeybee clubs, and overall providing local raw honey. The name Miami Honey comes from the fact that her family's home, where the apiary is located, is very close to Lake Miami. Since they have lived most of their life within walking distance of the lake, Janet felt the name represented where they grew up and shows an aspect of using local honey, which most people try to purchase because of its benefit for allergies. So here's my mood board showing off where I wanted to kind of go with the rebrand and how I wanted to use colors that represented honey and bees, as well as the idea of simplicity and natural local honey, given the raw nature of the honey that Janet uses when beekeeping. Going into the rebrand for the honey, the image here on the left shows what Janet had before as her branding and packaging when she gave out the honey. On the right shows some of the initial variations and logos that I had come up with, wanting to go with a more modern, minimalistic, and somewhat more high-end feeling. I wanted this rebrand to be able to be seen and stand alone, as well as be able to compete when placed next to other honey bottles. When looking at all of these versions, I decided to pick two of them, the top middle and then the second row far left logo that I felt could work well as a kit, having a primary and secondary logo that had features to each that went well with the other, through aspects like the bee being the main focus on the primary logo and the same bee being shown at a smaller scale on the secondary logo. I also felt that these two logos could show off the process of honey in the hand of the creator, as well as the squiggle of the one-line drawing representing how a honeybee flies, which is fast and in a pattern, or can hover when in the air. I then went on to make multiple small changes to this one-line drawing of the bee to make sure it read well as a bee and not a butterfly, and also being careful with how I represented the antenna and wings. So here's what my brand guide sheet looks like and shows off the two logos, one that I felt could be used for things more circular and the other used for a more horizontal purpose with the brand. This also shows off 3 different color versions that can be used, and you'll later see with some of my mock-ups for the brand. Going into my packaging, I wanted to carry out the idea with the logos on being simple, minimalistic, and classy looking, but something also different than what you might typically see for honey, and that being using a black for the background on the packaging, which I feel like really sets it apart from standard honey brands and looks very elegant in nature. I had tried other versions where I used the pale yellow as well as the orangey honey color in my branding, but I felt that the black was something that stood out and others agreed and seemed to be drawn to more. These two designs are what I ended up going with for my packaging, and with lots of opinions and love for both, I decided to utilize both packaging and create mock-ups for both, so that when I take this to Janet, she can have the ultimate say in what she prefers, or if she would like to utilize both for different things. Going into making mock-ups for the packaging, there really wasn't much out there for me to use with this specific bottle shape that Janet has, so I decided to print out my own and physically place them onto the bottles and take pictures of each to show how it would essentially look when actually printed and placed in the bottles to be sold. So this first slide shows the dripping honey version with photos that I took. And then this next slide shows off the horizontal layout of packaging with the other photos, all of which have been used for an active Instagram account to promote the honey. So here's what I designed for my business card, wanting to keep it similar to everything else, but incorporate more of that pale yellow color for the backside. It uses the secondary logo as the front design, and then the name of the owner and all the information on the back. These two hang tags would be used to tie a honey wand stick to the side of the bottles, either for a gift with the honey or with a purchase potentially. I felt using the black would be something that Janet could use if she wanted to keep everything uniform with the packaging, but the orangey honey color could be a nice contrast to add if she wanted with the actual black packaging that is already used. So here we have some stickers with the circular logo, which stickers are pretty popular right now to place onto laptop covers or water bottles. So I definitely wanted to use these as a promotion material as a way to get exposure for others to maybe ask about the brand or show off someone's love for honey. I wanted to also make a reusable canvas tote bag to help promote the business if people bought it while out and about and carry around with them at potentially a state fair or farmer's market, as you tend to accumulate a lot of things while there. Here we have 3 different versions of face masks for obvious reasons, with both logos being shown to choose from, as well as different color versions as options for people to pick, either with a solid color on the inside that is the same as the outside or a different color on the inside, bringing out more of that yellow color. With honey, sometimes comes the use of drinking tea or any other beverage that you could put honey in. So I wanted to include some mugs that you could use while drinking your tea. So here are 3 different versions with all 3 colors shown, and also each different primary and secondary logo. Finally, I wanted to include some t-shirts as options as well, so that if anyone wanted to buy them, they could. But if Janet and family or friends took honey to a farmer's market, or fair that they could all wear these to show that they work there and are selling the honey, making it easy for people to know who to talk to and where to purchase. And here shows off mock-ups of what my active social media account for Miami Honey looks like, with the profile image and stories, as well as all the photos that I have taken of the packaging. You can see the one singular image in the middle here, as well as a big chunk of the photo grid here on the right. And lastly, I wanted to throw in a potential idea for a booth that could be utilized at the fair or farmer's market, so people can easily find where Miami Honey is located and where to purchase. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. That was great. It was good to see so many thorough applications of it too. Excellent work.
Thanks.
Okay, Jordan Weissert, you are up next. So if you want to start sharing your screen, for anybody who's joined us in the live feed, please feel free to add comments and questions. There's some great stuff showing up there already. After Jordan Weister's presentation, we will switch into the Q&A and discussion portion of the panel. So we'll feed your comments and your questions in then. So Jordan, take it away.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Sharing my desktop. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we see like a full screen browser window with your logo in the center.
Perfect. My name is Jordan, and my capstone project is called Spiral Atelier. And Spiral Atelier is a vintage and sustainable ring company handcrafted by yours truly from a set of silverware, so spoon rings. So moving on, how this came to fruition basically, and how I got this whole idea. So this whole project is dedicated to my wonderful grandmother, who did pass away, but she was an antique seller, and I accumulated a beautiful set of silverware from her, as well as one of her rings, which just so happened to have been made out of a spoon. So now I kind of wear it every single day to kind of just remind me to live life to the fullest unapologetically, and it just reminds me to grow and appreciate life. So that's kind of where that project came about. And so kind of looking at the history of the spoon ring, and when I took a deep dive into everything about it, it really kind of started in the 60s and 70s as a way for like the hippie culture to celebrate life and be more sustainable and just do things that were really handcrafted and fun. So as I was going throughout this project, the kind of problem that I wanted to think about and wanted to try to solve or achieve was how I could make something that's like old and obviously not a new concept, and make it into something that was really cool, really fun, vibrant, I guess hip would be a good word for it, and just something that, you know, makes people want to buy these rings. So that's a little bit about the background, and moving on to the logo process and how that came to be. I knew I wanted it to be a letter logo. So this was kind of how I start my process, just kind of brain dumping all sorts of different fonts and typefaces to kind of figure out what fits best. And then down here is where I kind of started to narrow that down. And then I narrowed it down even more. I went with this really crazy typeface called Pillow Lava, I think is what it's called. And you can see with this eye here, it's kind of a little bit hard to read. So I did some iterations and decided for stylistic purposes to change up that eye and kind of make it so it's something incredibly recognizable when you look at it. So that was kind of where that took off. And then I also kind of dabbled in the idea of what a spiral like element would look like as maybe a secondary logo. And you can see that here. And then the final logo and the secondary logo mark. And Spiral Atelier, so the spiral is kind of from the form of an actual spoon ring, which traditionally goes in a spiral. So that's where that came from. And then atelier is a French word for a workshop or studio, which was really fitting since my workshop was in my parents' garage and I spent a lot of time in there, you know, handcrafting and making these rings. So that's the logo. And then from there, I kind of created this cool kind of pattern and shape that I ended up using for branding elements throughout that just kind of is super recognizable, is the secondary logo, but is also kind of a cool background per se. So moving on to some of my process, you can see some of the silverware that's there and some of the rings that I started to prototype. This process took me so long, but it was really cool to just kind of have to work with my hands and get my hands dirty and actually touch something. I know it gets really hard to be on a computer screen 24/7, especially as a designer. So it's really nice to just actually have to make something. And then here's just like a little, hopefully it plays, a little video of kind of showing you the process and how crazy it was to bring it all together. There's a really obnoxious video of me hammering. I mean, to get these rings to actually shape and go into a circle was hard. My core muscles hurt by the time I finished trying to put this all together. So I won't bore you with that. But moving on to the actual product shots that I took. This is kind of how this all came to be, and I got to art direct the whole thing and put it all together after the rings were made, and I got some help from a really awesome model to put these all together. But yeah, it was super cool to kind of see this come to life. And the whole collection has a name, which is called the Animistic Collection. And animistic means the belief that objects, places, and creatures all possessed a distinct spiritual essence. So using that in a sentence, like the jewelry we wear is often linked to a deep and powerful meaning that connects us together. We become animistic with our jewelry and derive from it a personality. So I always wear so many rings, even when I was younger. I have them on now if you can see it. But you really do kind of form a personality when you wear jewelry, and I wanted that to kind of show through and celebrate that and just kind of being your unique self. So moving on, I really wanted to try to put together a whole brand that encompassed everything that I've learned in the past 4 or 5 years. And so I wanted to kind of play around with the idea of a custom website. So I prototyped this in XD first. So this is kind of what the landing page starts to look like. And you can move down. Kind of says a little bit about the collection. This is a photo that I took at a really cool studio in Chicago with my awesome model. Shout out to her. She did an amazing job. Just a little bit more of the branding with this cool photo I took in my shower of all places. And that was kind of cool. You can shop now if it were an actual website, of course. And then it kind of getting super funky and out there just to show the collection of the rings. And these would be all clickable, obviously, so you can go and buy them. But I wanted to figure out kind of a cool way to represent all of these that wasn't boring. So I introduced some color and just wanted to bring that whole like 60s and 70s vibe into it. And then I went into a little bit of behind the brand. That's me. The inspiration, this is my grandmother's ring. So that's where that kind of came to be. And then the end card. So, and then I actually, this might play sound, so I apologize. But this, so I went into Webflow where you can personally like customize and like code a website. I didn't fully get to create the whole thing, but I was able to make this land page. So I can play a video of it. And what's cool is I was able to make like a custom cursor where the ring actually moves around with your mouse, like wherever you go. And then the spiral logo just kind of keeps going in an infinite loop to just kind of be all over the place and crazy and kind of grab your attention, which was kind of the goal of the whole project. So that's a little bit of that. And then the video that you guys saw playing is kind of just a short little intro video kind of advertisement, and I will play that for you guys now. So that was the little video that I was able to put together during that whole photo shoot. This was such a fun process. It was just really cool to actually challenge myself with videography and photography and actually have a product to shoot and, you know, a real purpose. So it was really fun to kind of see that all come together. And then here is just a little mock-up of maybe what the box might look like, or, you know, if I were deciding to do maybe like a bag or something in the future, you know, what the branding element might look like on a physical piece. So that's that. And then here is just part of the social media. This is the Instagram. It's actually live, so for anybody watching that wants to go take a look, it's Spiral Atelier with an underscore. So that is what that looks like. And then here's just kind of more of a visual of what some of those Instagram posts kind of looked like. It was really fun to just get super experimental with this part. I feel like with social media, the options are endless with how experimental you can get with stuff. So that was super fun. And then here I did a little bit of like an editorial, what it would look like if it were, say, on a magazine or something, which was really fun to kind of play around in Photoshop with. And then I did this in Photoshop as well, just kind of experimenting with some collage work. And this is on Instagram as like a continuous photo, so you can kind of like drag it. So that was super fun. And then here is just a couple of my favorite photos from the whole shoot campaign that I did. Again, shout out to my model, because none of this would have worked or happened without her. So that was just super awesome. So yeah, thank you guys. That was my project. And that is it.
Excellent. Thanks, Jordan. Really, really nice work. Okay, so Jordan, Emily, Savannah, if you would like to turn your cameras on. We got some great questions and comments from the YouTube chat. So as we're going through these and as we are talking, please, if you're tuning in live, feel free to add comments and questions and we'll introduce them. But I'm going to start with Savannah. So Savannah, this question came in from the chat and it says, would love to see illustrations of creatures that share the bear's space. Is there an aspect of your system that enlightens customers about saving the natural world so that hiking can continue?
There is no direct system yet, but what I was talking about earlier in this capstone, was that I made a series of tags and I realized like cork is a really like nice reusable resource. So a lot of my tags are going to be printed on cork, so I could just help cut down in certain ways and like reusing them cardboard and all that good stuff.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Savannah. Okay, this question is for Emily. And it says, Emily, when it came to the colors, what was the decision behind using the duller versions of the primary colors rather than the vibrant counterparts?
I really wanted to emphasize that feeling of relaxation. And I know that some audiences can feel a bit overstimulated or overwhelmed by big, bright in-your-face colors. So I kind of wanted to reduce any hesitation on the user's side.
Yeah, great. Okay, this is for Jordan Stewart. Your identity is elegant and unexpected for honey labels. Did you feel constrained or did you experience positive aspects of working within the power and limits that a rebrand might imply?
Yeah, so I don't think I would necessarily say that I felt constrained. I think the most constraint that I would have felt would be within the physical bottles that I had to work around. That was definitely something that was a little bit challenging just because you really had to work with, especially the sides of the bottles having like indents. That was definitely something that if I wanted to wrap something all the way around, it would kind of interfere with that somewhat. So I had to work with that, as well as just the constraint of the front bottle sizing. In terms of like the logo and the rebrand in general though, Janet gave me a lot of free reign to kind of do what I wanted to do with the rebrand, just because she had this design that she created off of Vistaprint, and it was just kind of a fast, easy thing to do in a short amount of time. So I was lucky enough with my rebrand to have kind of free reign to do some of the things that I would choose to do just myself, as well as with her guidance on some things that she would like to have within the brand.
Nice. I think that all came out looking really nice. So Jordan Weissert, your process was in many ways entrepreneurial, meaning that like you were in a lot of ways your own client. What was that process like to start out with like the making of the object sort of simultaneously with working to brand it? How did one of those like influence the other?
Yeah, no, it's a really great point. And I feel like it was very organic. I wanted to kind of let myself be as experimental as possible, and like if there was a happy accident, let it happen. But within like my research, I knew that I wanted to take inspiration, you know, from the 70s and from the 60s and kind of that mid-century modern kind of take on it. So I knew kind of right away where I wanted to take the branding. And then once I started to develop the rings and they kind of started to have a personality of its own, I started to want to add elements into that. And then when the photo shoot happened, you know, I had no idea how that was going to turn out, whether it was going to turn out really good or it was going to be a total bust. Had no idea, but it ended up working out. And it was cool because once I was putting all those together and editing them and starting to do more graphics and social work, I was able to pull colors from the outfits that she wore and kind of put them into the brand and kind of, you know, integrate it all together. So like the branding almost became more cohesive after, like once all of those pictures came together. So yeah, it was a super interesting but organic process. I don't know, hopefully that answered the question a little bit, but
yeah, that's great. I think, you know, I think that sounds like a really fascinating and interesting way to work. So speaking about this idea of process, Savannah, you mentioned early in your presentation that you actively made the choice to chase down the subject that you knew less about so that you could learn more about it along the way. And so I'm wondering, how did that impact your process for developing the brand identity, the specific parts that you shared in like the style guide, the logo, the colors and things like that, but then also all the other things that encapsulate what a brand really represents?
Yeah, so that was actually it was nice because I had like a beginner's sort of look into it. And as I researched more into it, it got more into like intermediate space. So when I first started like the logo and everything, I knew it was like I wanted something that was like fun, tough, could be worn by anyone anywhere. So I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna use my general knowledge here. And that's how I came up with the bear and the paw and everything. But then as like my project went on and I started looking at colors and I started learning more about backpacking itself, I got to add to my knowledge and then add to the design itself as I like understood more about like greens and like browns and blues and how those are like really like the essential colors that you'll see, how certain aspects of like weight can affect stuff and how it can like also in turn be translated into my project.
Yeah, great. And so being able to operate across media, Emily, you actively engaged with not only designing like the brand elements, but then applying it to a variety of different packaging types, all manner of mock-ups in order to really kind of push your idea in different directions. And that included the prototyping of the website. And so there's some really positive words in the chat for taking that on as a challenge. What was that experience like, moving from the more traditional media and applying your brand assets in the interactive space?
It was kind of difficult just because to put everything together and order everything and take my own photography, it would have cost way too much, way out of my budget for this project. So it also presented the challenge of, oh, how do I find existing photography and use what I have to kind of create a space that also represents my brand. And when I started this portion, I was really stuck on it. But I think once I got going, once I started looking at things, like ideas just kind of started running and it just kind of clicked.
Yeah. And sort of as I, because I was able to sort of participate in that and see it unfold, I think you did a great job of defining what those brand ideals were early on, so that then as you made your decisions, you were able to sort of root that in those original goals of what the brand represents. And I think you did a really nice job in all those different aspects, and it comes through in the project.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And then I think creating a brand guide throughout the project really, really helped on that.
Yeah, nice work. So Jordan Stewart, there's a comment in the chat, which I totally agree with, that the negative space on the bottle labels, it's a great use of the bottle itself as part of the design. And that was really cool to see that come together, where the negative space of your label creates that honey aspect. Can you talk a little bit about how the prototyping of that came together?
Yeah, so again, kind of going along with the constraints of having some of the like divots that are on the sides of the bottle, I was trying to think of different ways that maybe I could play with just having something on the front and the back rather than maybe wrapping around the whole thing. And when doing that, because one of my colors happened to be, at least on my branding, happened to kind of be the color of the honey with that orangey color, I wanted to kind of play into that with maybe using some negative space just to kind of bring out that color and just kind of play with, again, just maybe not having something wrap around it, but just having a front thing that could stand alone and still be really strong. So yeah, I messed around a lot with maybe making them more geometric in shape for the honey drips, or kind of making them be more curved in nature and things like that. And I kind of just ended up with the one that I had and really loved that one. And I think, like you said, it really played well with the negative space and just that color of the honey. So I was really happy with how that turned out. And honestly, I think a lot of people really loved that one because most people saw the other version that was more horizontal first. And then when they saw the honey dripping one, they're like, okay, I love that one, but you should include this one too because they're both so cool. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll do two. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're engaging for different reasons, and they will at some point make the methods of production may come into play, and that may dictate how many of one or the other get produced. But it's clever. It's an interesting way of looking at the label as not just something that gets stuck onto the bottle, but that the label and the bottle really do come together and have this like synthesis that creates a single message and a single feeling in a really nice way. So you made really good choices there, and I'm very glad to see that.
Thank you. I also think just with the original packaging that she had, just having a circular shape on the front didn't really play into anything that was with the bottle. It was just kind of stuck on there randomly. And I really wanted to try to play with some of the aspects of the bottle, like you were saying, and some of the negative space. So that's kind of, again, why I chose to, do that kind of label that I did. So I'm glad that it read well and everyone loves it. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. So Jordan Weissert, I want to talk a little bit more about the photographs, because that really to me was like a big turning point in how your brand coalesced. And you talked about it as being a bit of a experiment. You didn't exactly know how it was going to go. You went into it just sort of like with an open mind and a very skilled, very talented model. And then to have that video also come out of that same experience. I think the video is fantastic. It's got the right energy. It's got the right vibe. And when you're talking about branding, there's all the specific things. There's the specific things that you can like put numbers on. You can say it's this color, it's this font, the spacing has to be this. But then there's this other stuff that you can't necessarily put your finger on always. What was it like to then have the sort of initial photographs come together, but develop a series of photographs plus that video all within that same vibe of stuff that's not quite as easy to put your finger on, like this font, this color?
Yeah, so kind of so the pictures turned out, so I only had about 2 hours in the studio to set up, get her ready, because I got to style her, which was also super fun because I love fashion. So getting to put her in my clothes and kind of brand and art direct that per se was super cool too. And I did her makeup. So it was a whole ordeal. But so yeah, I only had 2 hours to do that and get video. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of brain dump as many things as I possibly can and then see what I can work with afterwards. And so with the whole editing process, I wanted the photos to be kind of along the lines of something that was slightly more vintage, but still like retro and cool. And I wanted to take that cool aspect, since these rings are silver. I didn't want the photos to be kind of that warm vintage. I want it to be kind of cooler. So that's kind of how I edited. And then once I got a kind of preset per se in Lightroom, that's just kind of how I edited all the photos. And then I was actually able to apply that same effect as a LUT within Final Cut. So I was able to put that on the video as well, and then kind of make it a whole package. But yeah, it was pretty interesting process to see kind of a brand, but then a full brand, like once the photos were done, because you're right, the photos were like the biggest part of putting this all together.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm hearing in your answer is that you were able to craft a project that just demonstrated or explored all these different avenues of things that you're interested in, and bring them into one place. And I feel like the loop would be closed if you also then like DJ'd your launch party in some,
wanted, oh my gosh, for the video, I wanted to be able to do my own music, and I wanted to take like sounds of like the rings like clinking together and like create something, but I was like, this is way too much for my brain to handle. So, but yeah, it was definitely hard in the beginning of Capstone, because I remember I had like a whole different idea in my head, but nothing quite was exactly what I wanted, where I could have every single element of everything I learned within the project. So I think that was kind of the biggest problem, or just like push for me. It was trying to get everything in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, scope creep or even being able to keep these things manageable can be pretty difficult. So back to Savannah, you spoke at the beginning of the part of your presentation where you talked about the beginning of the Bear Tough brand, the value and the importance of infographics, and you spoke about trying to balance the graphics with the numbers, with the text, in order to make things approachable. And I think there's a lot of value in this idea that infographics is a part of the brand that you're putting forward. What are some of the things that the brand itself can do through those infographics to keep your audience engaged?
Yeah, so like I said in the first part, I do have like fun like little call outs like for my brand too. So it's like, oh, like we only take like 3.5 out of 5, like stuff like that. That helps keep not only like interest in the brand, but like whatever they're having. But then to help like bring more interest in all to it, I can use the infographics as a way to talk about like different like parks and forests and stuff. So I can make like specific ones for specific areas if they get like sponsored potentially. So yeah, just to help bring more awareness to them while still like promoting the company in a way without totally like overbalancing one or the other, because it is still a balancing act.
Yeah, definitely. And those kinds of engagements can both be informative, but also the thing that allows the activity to have some kind of longevity.
Yeah.
Cool. So Emily, your brand had a couple of different turning points. I'm remembering that you, during your research process, did a couple of different like exercises. And I was wondering if you could talk about how some of those early process experiments informed some of the decisions that you made later.
Yeah, of course. So I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do for my capstone, and it probably took me through like the first month of the semester to figure it out. But by the time that I did figure out what I wanted to do, and like writing down things that I enjoyed, things that I thought mattered to me, and stuff like that, play was one of those things, especially because it's a pretty like active point in my life. So really starting out with like the interviews and the survey that I sent out, that was a big like deciding factor in what I was going to do and seeing the results in that. So I had like my family like sculpt with Play-Doh and answer questions about their work environment through that. And through the survey, I kind of found out that people really enjoy like, the nostalgic factor of some of these toys from their childhood, but they're embarrassed and they don't feel like if they respond with like, oh, how are you? If they don't respond with busy, then the answer is wrong. So part of me really wanted to create something that could kind of flip that mindset and also introduce play into an office setting or into just like a at-home relaxing setting while also getting people away from their screens.
Yeah, nice. And such an important thing that you found through some of that early research and the value of what it provides in terms of like that balance and wellness and things like that. So Jordan Stewart, with your brand, the way that you applied the different marks has a lot of value in a lot of different spaces. A couple of things that I was really intrigued by were the inclusion of the booth that would be at farmers markets, the tote bag that is very elegant looking and would also allow for promotion around, like you mentioned, a farmer's market or anywhere you would use a reusable bag. And I also really like the idea of the t-shirt that is both like merch and uniform. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about almost this like dual purpose that exists within some of the elements that you've introduced.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with this brand, it's not really something that is being sold besides being local kind of a thing. So having places like a farmer's market or a state fair and things like that are really good opportunities for not only people to buy the product, but promotion as well. So if people have the opportunity to buy these bags or buy t-shirts, but they also see them being used or worn by the people who are selling it, I think it kind of serves as a dual purpose for just promotion materials. And so, yeah, I think having the opportunity for something that can be used to promote that's not just social media because it is just kind of a local brand would be something really beneficial for them. So that's kind of why I decided to incorporate things like the bag and the t-shirt and things like that.
Nice. Yeah. Cause yeah, you're right. Like social media can go nationwide, international. It can reach everybody all the time, but that's not your audience. Your audience is within a drivable, I'm sort of assuming based on what we had talked about before, like your audience is like within a drivable radius. And how do you best share that? And if somebody sees the shirt at the grocery store or the gas station just because someone else is wearing it, that's the kind of elements that land. So really good work thinking about the scale in which your branding really does operate. I think that's a really valuable way to approach it. So we're coming up to the last couple minutes here. And so what I'd like to do is I would like to go around and I would like for everybody to share what you feel is your biggest success within this project. And then number two, what was one of the biggest challenges that you faced with the idea of branding specifically? So Jordan Weissert, we'll start with you. So what was your biggest success and what was one of the biggest like branding specific challenges that you worked towards? Maybe they're the same thing.
So I think the biggest success for me was, again, creating a project that would encompass everything that I've ever learned. And, you know, being able to be experimental was something I really wanted to do. So I think with the photos and the videos and getting to put it all together was probably, I think, my biggest success. And then the thing I probably struggled with the most or had to be super hard on myself about was, again, keeping it consistent. Because when you're doing a project on your own, you know, you don't have guidelines. You don't have somebody telling you, hey, you can't do that. It doesn't fit the brand or this and that. So I had to set, you know, parameters for myself of what things fit and, you know, what didn't, and kind of be my own boss, I guess. So there was definitely some hard parts to that as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jordan. How about Savannah? What was your biggest success and then one of your biggest branding specific challenges?
My biggest success was actually the infographics. I've wanted to do them for a really long time. That was probably one of the things that actually drew me into graphic design. So being able to actually make it and like really enjoy it and actually like love the way it looks was super exciting. Definitely the biggest success. My challenge was definitely cohesion though. Just making sure everything like stuck together in like a nice way and it all worked and nothing was like randomly like really different. That was a really big challenge, and I constantly had to like take a step back and like look at what I was doing and then decide like, okay, like do I need to change this? Do I need to change that? Like, does it work together? If I put it all like lay it all out, will it look the same or is something like totally wrong? So that was definitely my biggest challenge.
Great. Yeah, those are some of the biggest challenges, even but the value of uh, defining your brand guideline starts to really address those. Emily, how about you? What was your biggest success and then your biggest branding specific challenge?
I think these are like one and the same. I think that like my packaging and the brand uniformity was probably the most effective portion of my project, but it was also the hardest because I wanted to create all of these unique boxes and packaging ideas for every single thing while keeping them within like the same brand standards and having the same feel. And that was especially difficult coming to some of the later boxes, like the box that contains like one of everything, and just trying to figure out how to arrange those shapes on the package and keep that consistency throughout, while also creating interest and diversity throughout like each of the products.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely big challenges, but you did them well. So I'm glad that was also your success. How about you, Jordan Stewart?
Yeah, I would say probably my biggest success was creating a branding kit to serve for different purposes with both logo versions, as well as just the promotional materials like we were talking about to be used for not only the owner and the workers, but to also be able to get the brand out there and have certain people come in to then buy the honey after seeing it. I think maybe my biggest challenge was just I've never done a rebrand before, so having to work within some constraints like the bottle types and maybe like the name and things like that. Just having some things to work around was definitely a challenge, but it was a good challenge that pushed me as a designer, so I'm happy I got to do it. So
that's great. And it was a good challenge to take on, and I think you thrived within it. So good work. All right. So that brings us to our time. Thank you, Savannah, Emily, Jordan, and Jordan. Great presentations, great projects. Thank you, the four of you, for being in my section and going all in on this process and this like online Zoom school, like crazy, weird 2021, 2020, maybe it's still March semester. I really appreciate it. You did a great job. You did a great job today. Thanks for everybody who tuned in live and offered up questions and comments. We really appreciate you being here as well. There's one more panel tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central. The link to it is in the description of this video. So thank you again for the great presentations. And I really, all four of you, it was a pleasure working with you this semester. And I totally am excited and looking forward to seeing what you all do next. So good work. Thanks.